Alright, hi guys. Welcome back to the grinding room again. We're going to be finishing up on this guy today, hopefully. Don't have any warps in here, it looks like, which is really good to see. I'm going to be finishing up doing most of the polishing today and hopefully putting a handle on. I have noticed that there's a slight stress fracture coming down a little bit of a ways into the blade. You can see it right here. Well, you can't really see it, but I've got a little line drawn that I'm going to need to chop off that material. So I'm going to have to do that real quick. But then we'll be going on to the polishing. And what I'm going to be using for the polishing are these. These are die grinding stones. And I've got quite a few of them in different grits. And this is probably one of the more jerry-rigged ways that I've polished something. But it's worked really well, so I'm going to kind of keep doing it. Basically what you do is you take a multi-tool like this, like one of these things, and you can super glue one of those die grinding stones here and just go absolutely crazy with it. It's a lot easier than hand sanding, but it still gives you essentially the same hand sanded finish. And then I've also got some felt pads and stuff that fit onto that multi-tool as well. And then I can use polishing compound and cutting compound that you normally use for polishing auto body parts to do that same polish. So we're going to see how it goes. I've only ever done it once before, and it turned out okay. I didn't love the finish, so I'm going to try a couple different changes with it, but you guys get to come along and see that experience as well and see how I try and do it. I'm not really sure how it's going to turn out, so we'll have to see. But yeah, on that, we're going to be throwing on a handle as well, hopefully today. I think I'm going to be using this stuff. This is bloodwood. I have a big old chunk of it, but I'm going to be cutting off a chunk of it for the handle of this Nakiri. So let's see, we're going to see how it turns out. But yeah, I'm also going to show you guys how I mount stuff so that I can polish it and or hand sand it, because this is how I mount stuff for hand sanding as well. So you guys will get to see that. But yeah, thank you guys for coming by, sticking around. And I hope you guys enjoy it. If you can, please leave a comment, subscribe if you can, or leave a like. Thanks so much. Let's get to work. All right, so as you can see, all I've got here is a piece of wood. And this piece of wood has a bunch of hot glue on it, what used to be about 1.5 hot glue sticks. And all I do is I heat it up with the torch till it's just sticky, and then I can just set the knife onto it, work it in a little bit, and it'll stay stuck there. I do need to let it cool down. I can't just go crazy on it immediately, but it does cool down, and then it stays stuck there for, well, until I heat it back up. And it works very good. And I'm going to be showing you guys what I use here too. So I've got a bunch of different little boxes in here that have all of the grits on them. So I'm going to be starting at 180 grit, and I'm probably going to jump straight up to about 200, and I'm going to end at 1200, but I'm probably going to go 180, 200, probably to 400, 600, 800, and then 1200. I do have some grits in between those two, but I don't think I'm going to need it for this knife. So yeah, we're going to get that all set up, and then we'll be good to go. Alrighty. It's going to be noisy, so let's get started. We're going to see how well this works. How long it takes us to get through 180 grit. All right, so that is 180 grit done already, which is much faster than I would be able to do it with plain old sandpaper. So next we're going to be doing 200 grit, which I've got right here. Going to see how this one goes. And then we're going to move on to 400. I just got to remove this stone from here. So I was thinking, while I'm waiting for the glue to set, I should introduce you guys to my two companions here out of the workshop. I have two shop cats. This is Paleo. And over there is Ryu. So if you see these guys running around in the videos, that's who they are. The gray one is named Paleo, and you also know it's him because he's missing one of his feet. And this one's Ryu. Hey buddy, how are you doing? There you go. See, he's only got one claw on that foot. But yeah, these are my shop cats. You'll usually see them back here sitting in their bed, but come summertime, they're usually outside. All right. Hey, bud. All right, I think that's enough cat time. We'll get back to work. You guys will get some loving later. All right, so now we're doing 200 grit. All right, so now that we're done with the 200 grit, we're going to be moving on to 400 grit. I've got to always make sure that this surface is clean. It doesn't have any water or any grit from the last stone I used when I move up a grit. Otherwise, that lower grit sludge or slurry will get mixed in and will cause deeper scratches than I want. So if I'm going up to 400 grit, I need to make sure that everything is clean of the 200 grit and so on and so forth. Because if I leave that lower grit there, it's going to get caught in the high grit stone and then just ruin everything, essentially. So that's why this is clean now. I'm going to pull the old stone off and we're going to put a new stone on and continue on. All right, on to 400 grit. All right, so we're moving on to 800 grit now. I'm just waiting for the glue to set. And just so you guys can see, I'll show you guys what I'm going to be using today. For polishing as well. So I've kind of figured out the steps. It's this, which is cutting compound for paint. And then this for specifically for metal polishing. And then I've got this for a fine. I've got these two for final, and I'm kind of tossing between the two on what I'm going to be using. So here's the final ones. So these are going to be final polish, metal polishing, and then first polish. Yeah, I'm just waiting for the stone to set, and then we'll get started on this guy again. All right, so that is 1200 grit stone out of the way and done. We've got a kind of a weird model-y finish from the way that this thing vibrates, but I don't think it doesn't leave very deep scratches. So I'm going to be now using the first polishing compound on a polishing pad that I need to put on here. So I'll be right back once that is ready. All right, so now we're going to be starting with the metal polish. So we're going to use the cutting compound first. And it's just this weird kind of paste stuff. It's paste with a bit of grit in it. If it wants to come out. There we go. I don't know what the grit is akin to in this stuff. I'm not quite sure. But I know it's a pretty high gloss finish already, so we're going to get to work on it. All right, so that's the first cut polish. Now we're moving on to the metal polish. Away we go. All right, so now we're starting with the Scratch X. We're going to see how it turns out. All right, so I've got this all set up now. Again, I ran into some issues yesterday. So we're going to be starting with the metal polish again. I slipped and I scored a big line along here with one of the sanding. With this thing, I caught the corner of it, and it just took a big line out, so I needed to re-sand some stuff. Or not sand, but re-polish it out using the stones. So we're back to using the metal polish. And we'll get straight to that. All right, so it looks like it's not pulling out the scratches that I needed pulled out, so we're gonna start over with the cut compound. That's looking a little better. All right, so this side is done, and it is mirror finished. I'm very happy with it. And as you can see, the other side looks absolutely disgusting, but this side is very, very shiny. So I think I'm going to continue doing this, this tactic of it. But I think I'm going to change this thing just because I'm very concerned about this glue leaving residue on here. And to get rid of it, I need to basically like buff it off. But to buff it off, I need to use a polishing compound, and the polishing compound is a less fine grit than the final finish that I'm using. So I need to find a better way to polish it, or to hold it, essentially. So I'm going to go and grab something that will hopefully let me do that. So if you guys can just give me a second, I'm going to go and do that. All right, so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take this knife, and I'm going to be using some painter's tape to keep one side of the knife. It's going to get a little bit of glue on it from the painter's tape, but I'm a lot less concerned about getting that little bit of glue off. I can just use acetone or something to get it off. And it's just going to be used to keep everything clean from this glue down here, from the hot glue that I warm up. And that way, I don't need to worry about any of the hot glue sticking to this side of the knife. So I think that's how we're going to work it. So I've just got this side all covered up. We're going to glue it down, and then I'm just going to go ham on it again like I did before, going between the stones and up to the 1200 grit stone, and then we'll move back to the polishing. All right. I will see you guys in a minute. Alrighty, we're going to be starting with 200 grit on this side, I think. There's a 220 grit stone that we're going to start with. All right, so we're done polishing completely. This thing is about as mirrored as I can physically get it. And it looks really good. So now we've got to cut a handle and, well, not cut a handle. I've already got the handle cut. But now I've got to drill holes for the handle, broach out where the tang is going to sit, and then I need to burn the tang in. And then we glue it up and then shape the handle. And then we're good to go. So that's what we're going to be doing next. Away we go. All right, well, hole's drilled. Don't know how straight it's going to be, but we'll find out. All right, so now that we've got the hole drilled, I need to do something called broaching, which is essentially just taking, I've made my own and it's really freaking crusty. It's basically just a pair of vice grips and an old hacksaw blade or a jigsaw blade that can fit inside the hole, and then you just use it to make it a rectangular hole. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now, because I need to try and make it so that it's rectangular so that we have, basically we're burning the tang in less is what I'm hoping we can do with this. So now that that's tight, all I need to do is change my vise orientation. All right, vise orientation changed. Now we just basically start sawing away with this. And removing as much material as we can. All right, so broaching's done. All you can see that I'm doing is basically just making the hole more rectangular so that it doesn't fit the tang by any stretch of the imagination, but you want to give it some area that it can just lightly fit to, essentially. You're trying to just make it so that it can fit just a little bit easier in there once you heat everything up and get going. That's new. I never actually have it start on fire. There you go. See, so it makes it much nicer to burn it in. So now I can set it like that. And then I'll just use the broach to clean out all the char and grossness that builds up from the burning. And we're going to let that heat up. All right. So I have made an error. The tang on this knife is way too long for this handle. So I have two options. I can either cut the tang and just glue the handle on as normal, or I can add a spacer. So I can grab a different chunk of wood, cut it, and then burn it on, and then add this. Now, I do like that idea. However, it means that my handle ends up being like really long and looking kind of awkward. So I think I'm just going to have to chop the tang, which isn't great, but there's worse things that I could do. So I think that is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to chop the tang off. So I'll be back in a second once I do that. All right, there we go. Tang's shorter. And if I was making like a hidden tang knife that was meant to be used for hunting, I would not be doing this. I would not be making the tang this short. I'd be making it much longer, and I would be pinning it and gluing it. I would not just be gluing it like I am. But for a chef's knife that isn't going to be seeing any sort of like real like impact work, especially a Nakiri, it's not going to matter too much. I'm gonna glue it in after we've shaped it, and then yeah, we'll be good to go, I think. And there we go. Looks like she's on there pretty good. Now the handle will be a little bit loose. No matter what I do, it will always be a little bit loose. But it looks like it's going to fit really nicely. I'm very pleased with how that looks, actually. Just want to check something real quick. Do I like that angle more? No, I like the way that looks. All right. So, on to the next thing. Which, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking the handle and basically just laying it flat and then drawing lines down each corner and then just sanding each corner off on the sanding belt, making sure everything's nice and neat and even, and then gluing it up and finishing it. And then we'll be good to go. So yeah, we'll see how she goes. All right. So this thing right here that I've got, this is like one of my polishing setups. And I think in some of my earlier videos, you guys have seen it running. All I'm going to be doing here, so this stone up here, this big stone up here is very flat. Very, very, very flat. So I basically just lay this down on here. Now, to be fair, the wood is not very flat. But then I just take either a scribe or a marker or something of that sort. If I can find a scribe or a marker. So I've got my pen, and all I'm going to do is using the flat part, just lay the pen down flat, and I just draw lines along every side and occasionally drop the pen down this thing. All right, so now that side, so you can see it's all done on one side, and then I just flip it around and do the same thing. And there we go. And then I can go here, 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 and here to just give myself kind of a rough idea of where I'm going to on the corners and the back side. But yeah, so now I just need to sand this down. All right, so handle is shaped. We're just going to glue it up now and then glue everything together. And then we're good to go. We'll be done. But yeah, there we go. It looks nice and pretty. I like it a lot, actually. So we'll get to gluing. All right, so this is what I'm using. I'm just going to be using 5-minute epoxy for this glue up. And with gluing this stuff up, you always need to use more than you think you do. It's better to have too much and have some overflow than not have enough and have it look gross. Or need to make more and then not be able to get everything to fit together properly. You can always clean stuff up afterwards. I find that's always the better way to go about it. So I'm just waiting for these things to kind of get to where they need to go. And then I'll show you guys the actual gluing up. All right, so how I usually get the glue in is I quite literally I'll just pour it in. If it's warm enough outside to do that. That should be enough epoxy. If it isn't, we'll find out in a hurry. Make sure you don't have any epoxy on your hands so you don't get any on the knife blade. And then I like to do it like this so that I can let all the epoxy that I don't want drain out. Can make sure everything lines up nice and clean. Grab a little rag and wipe it off, and then we just let it sit like this, just to sit there. All right, that is the Nakiri build done. I think it looks pretty good. It's nice and straight. It's got a nice little octagonal handle made out of bloodwood on it. The polishing system is working amazingly. It looks really, really good on here. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. But yeah, there we go. She's done, nice and shiny. You can see my fingerprints on it, sadly, but all nice and done. If anyone's interested, this guy is going to be up for sale on my Etsy store, along with a couple other things that you guys have probably seen me make, and some things that you guys haven't seen me make. And if you want to see some other stuff that I have made, those will be in my Instagram, which will be down in the description along with the Etsy store. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out. If you could, leave a comment, like the video, subscribe. That would be awesome. But thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.